Hello and welcome back to Elite Dangerous, our wonderful theme park here in Planet Coaster. And what I'm going to be doing in this episode is expanding our current fleet that we have going. We initially built the F-63 Condor, and previously we just now got finished building the Sidewinder bar and grill. But what I'm doing now is laying out the grid work for a much larger ship, and this is the Type-7 transport. This is roughly to scale. I'm not gonna really sit there and nitpick every angle, as you can't really do that in Planet Coaster. It's not really meant, in my opinion, to do exact copies and keep it within a good part count. So we will be using some different building techniques than, say, the Sidewinder over there. Now, the Sidewinder, what we did is we built a similar to this, a skeletal structure, and then we wrapped it with a smooth, thin sheet of material. We can't do that here, mainly due to the size of this ship, but also I still want to save it as a blueprint, and if I wrap it essentially twice, it's not going to work out for us. And so to cover the most area, you'll see later on what we have to do to kind of get all the space filled in, essentially. But what we're going to do is quickly go along, make the outline of the bottom of the ship. I've noticed the Type-7 is relatively flat on the bottom. It has this lower, say, a quarter section that is fairly thick and is just a flat shape. Now, this is where all the wings are attached. The landing gear is attached to the bottom of this, and it looks like the main weight-bearing frame is all this lower quarter. The upper frame is more for just keeping the cargo safe, and it being a freighter, it's about the mid-tier freighter, the Type-7. It's the upgrade after the Type-6 or the keelback, depending on which route you go, even though I don't think many people get the keelback. It's not quite up to par, in my opinion. It has quite the interesting shape. It looks a little bit like a whale to me. It has these fins at the bottom, and then it has this giant body just slapped on top of it. It was a pretty complicated build, and you'll see the scaffolding is actually what I spent most of the time on. It's not going to gather up 100% of every curve and every line in the spaceship itself, but it is going to hopefully capture some of the major elements, such as the wing placement, the general boxiness of the upper cargo areas, and the engine placement. That's basically what you're looking for when you're doing a recreation or a direct copy. You can go full detail, but as I said, that's not really the goal for this one. The goal for this is to get it close enough and recognizable from a distance that the difference really is negligible. We have a pretty interesting shape for the front. It has quite I think it's about a 6-sided polygon, just kind of shoved there at a 45-degree, kind of looks like it was stamped on the nose, and that provides a nice wide surface area. And then it has all these angles kind of branching down and wrapping along the side. And the couple of source images that I did use to make this, I used a couple of the concept images and then a couple of the in-game screenshots just to come up with the overall frame, because obviously I'm not going to be able to get all the angles that I need just from one photo. I had to kind of diversify and look at different angles, and then there might not be sources for that angle, so I have to refer to concept art, which actually doesn't really reflect the final in-game shape, but that's a compromise that you have to make sometimes, unless you feel like loading up the game and taking your own screenshots, which I could have. I have Elite Dangerous, it is installed, but I currently actually don't have a Type-7, and I didn't really want to fly from where I am a couple hours to go track one down and buy it for a couple million in-game credits, so I can just get some screenshots for this build. And the best route, of course, was to just use some concept art. Now, the frames and everything, it feels like I'm almost building a Zeppelin. It's pretty interesting. You got all this framework being wrapped around, and and you're slowly building up the shape, and the shape just slowly reveals itself out of this box that we initially carved. And even in the shadow down below, it's actually a pretty accurate representation of just the overall ship. If you just, with your mind's eye, you can kind of fill that in, and you're just like, wow, that is the Type-7. It has this nice bulbous front end, and then it kind of becomes streamlined and squares off as you go to the back half. The front also has some air intakes. All of Elite Dangerous' ships technically can fly in atmosphere, I believe. Not sure about the Federal Corvette, though. That thing is pretty big. We'll see how they do that when they actually add atmospheric flight. But, you know, this thing has wings on it, so in theory, I would assume they're implying that this thing can actually go down onto an atmosphere itself and land and hopefully hold its own and fly well enough. In doing so, there's actually some air intakes on the front end there, and then that just kind of carves out the profile as we go out into the back. The back section has a couple engine bays. It has two small engine bays along the bottom, kind of attached to the subframe. That is the main weight-bearing frame of the ship. And then it has these two upper kind of engine bays just strapped to the side, and they are what looks to be the main thrust provider for the Type-7. And they have an interesting shape. I didn't really capture, I don't think, the exact shape in the long run once I actually skinned the whole thing, but from a distance, to me, it still looks close enough to a Type-7 that really I'm not too worried about it, and it is pretty much at the limit of the part count once it's complete, so I can't really go back in and add too much detail. I might be able to if you guys want me to in the comments down below. Always give me feedback, give me things that I might have missed, give me things to change and look into. If it's quick and easy, I'll go ahead and do that real quick for you guys, just so that you can get the best experience possible. The skinning of the outer hull is essentially kind of what I plan to do for the Sidewinder. The Sidewinder being, you know, this very smooth metallic, at least how that we made it, just using the outer skin, and it's missing a lot of the plating look. And with the Type-7, it is something that I wanted to try and capture a little bit more. The problem being, I think it made it look a little too busy and not quite as stylized, and it doesn't quite pop out as much as I maybe hoped it would. There's a lot of large pieces in here, and what that does is kind of just flattens the whole thing out, and everything's just blending together. You'll see once it's all fully completed what I'm talking about, but really using the largest scenery items was to basically save part count and to get as much of it done and surfaced as quickly as possible. If I had to redo this build, I might actually just do the skin technique that we did on the Sidewinder and then manually do some detailing and plating over it. It would be a much longer process and would take probably a week or so, given the free time that I have to actually work on these things. But overall, the build, I think, is just successful. You know, you can tell what it is, and it is a very commanding kind of shape and presence over the airspace, and that's what I was looking for when making the Type-7. It was also one of the most requested ships to make from the previous episode and on Reddit and things like that. So if you guys, you know, have anything you want me to specifically make from Elite Dangerous, let me know in the comments. I do read them, and I just love creating your guys' suggestions, because it allows you guys to, one, participate in these builds. It allows you to also then go to the workshop and get these for yourself. If you don't want to build this, I might have the time to build it for you, in essence, so that you can use it for whatever means you deem necessary. The plating that we're going to do on camera is relatively simple. We're just going to start with the bottom. It's the easiest shape to probably replicate, just because it's relatively boxy. It has a lot of straight edges, and it would take the least amount of time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the upper section and then just paste it, flip it upside down, and then boom, you have the whole under section done as well. Now, in hindsight, I probably should have done at least one side as well before copying and pasting it, but that would have saved us just a little bit more time. We're going to cap off the bottom. I'm going to actually leave off any detailing on the bottom, such as the landing gear or anything like that, until maybe the next episode, when we actually find the purpose for this ship and actually put it into our park in a usable, functional way. We can also use it as a decoration somewhere, just have it like floating in the sky, but I would much rather, have the peeps interact with it in a meaningful fashion so that it's not just an art asset. And hopefully you guys agree with what I have in mind, and hopefully I can even make what I have in mind. It's a little bit of a big project and really might be a little overkill for what I'm using it for, but maybe a hauler would have been a little bit more appropriate in terms of scale. Oh well, we'll see. We can always make a hauler. That's a small ship, so I don't think that would be more than one episode or a day's worth of building anyways, though it has a lot of curves. And now I'm just rambling about Elite Dangerous ships, which I do need to go back in and play again. I do love Elite Dangerous. It's probably one of my favorite games. It's just very time consuming, and my time right now is just being eaten up by Planet Coaster, our wonderful other game from Frontier. So it seems like, if I'm not playing one Frontier game, I'm playing the other, and still somehow combining the two. So am I technically playing them both? Don't know. So we have pretty much a whole bunch of it skinned at this point, using a whole lot of different pieces. You can see the interior actually is fairly open still. You could do something with it. You could put shops along the interior or something like that, have a path going through the middle. It is fairly large, and when we get to the real-time section, you guys will hopefully be able to see how large it is compared to, say, our other buildings in the game. It is just a massive collection of parts and pieces. I mean, this thing is floating very high in the air right now, and occasionally you can see the background. So let's go ahead into real time. And here it is, the roughly to scale Type-7, give or take a few meters on the height, width, and length, but this is roughly what you would see in the game in terms of if you were flying a Sidewinder next to one of these, and it is quite the massive ship. As you can see, it is many stories into the air, and it is just casting a shadow over the giant crater that we made, and just the park in general. If we were to copy this thing real quick before we go and get a great look at this, and just throw it into the previous section of the park, it is massive. It's not going to fit into our Jameson Memorial Station, obviously, but it is quite the hulk of a machine. In fact, let's paste it over here so that's near the ground, and we'll fly over next to our Sidewinder and Type-7 here. Now, it has little wings. The wings are a little bit boxier than probably what you would see in the game. They do have some aerodynamic shape to the front end, but technically these look like they would be able to fold up and collapse if need be, if it was docking maybe in a tight corridor, but that's not something that I really captured really well on this build, nor did I really capture, I don't think, the full cockpit quite nicely. But we are sitting at the limit of the parts. We're at 1948 right now, and using kind of the predetermined cockpit here just to get the shape, because really that's the important thing. I want the profile from a distance to read really well, and I think that at least is successful. I can tell just from a glance what this thing is, and hopefully you guys can too as well. It is missing some things though, like there should be some more detailing around this vent. Maybe I can go back in and fiddle around with some stuff. The back end looks pretty cool. We got all the engine bays back here, and divvying up and all lit up, which is pretty cool looking. Here is our one little block to make this one solid little building. If you want to use it as a scenery item at any angle, all you got to do is delete that little block, which is something we can do right now. So now that item has been released from the grid, and we can use it at any angle or any shape that we want. So we'll just fly it forward a little bit and possibly just do an angled sweep right there, and it is just possibly passing by, delivering massive amounts of cargo to this outpost. Like, this requires a large landing pad. It's the first hauler that does require a large landing pad, so it can actually really only land at the largest planetary bases or the large starports. The underside is plain. I do want to add the landing gear. In fact, what I have planned for this thing is to be landed, so that will be part of something else, and hopefully with the two blueprints combined, you'll be able to recreate what I have in my mind here within the next episode or so. But we do need to have the landing gear and the cargo hatch in here. You guys can probably guess what I'm going to be using it for, but we'll find out, Arnett, if you're correct, next time. The engine pods being connected to the side, and just the general textures is pretty nice, having some variation in color, some variation in shape, and little tidbits sticking out here and there. Not quite 100% accurate, but it definitely gets the point across. It looks like I'm missing a little triangle there. Huh. Well, the inside, it's really messy, as you can see, though it kind of looks cool by itself. You could definitely make this look like a space station if that's something you want to do. And I think that's pretty much it that we can cover this episode. If you guys enjoyed today's episode of Planet Coaster, feel free to subscribe to my channel for more creative goodness such as this. In the comments down below, do let me know what you guys think, what I should be working on next, if there's anything you would like me to change or add. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Planet Coaster.